Hello everyone and welcome to the second version of TCF. In this tutorial series, we'll focus on starting from scratch using TCF. Of course, everybody will have the sample with the version 2 written on it. Once you have the sample, we can start with whatever we're doing right now. We will pick Protector as a pack to start with for the player character and for the AI. If you don't have Protector, feel free to use anything you like. So without further ado, let's dive into it. Right, so after adding the protector, let's dive into doing this. First, let's start with the player character, since we're gonna start with that one. The player character will be this one, and we're gonna switch it to a mesh that protector uses, and hopefully the mesh without the weapons, because we're gonna set up the weapons differently, and that's a topic on its own. So let's do with the mannequin that protector uses. So let's use this one. If we put it here, of course, do know that the skeleton you're using is important, so do know the directory where this exists. So we're gonna use this one, and right away you can notice some artifacts happening. It's because we're using the mani from UE5, so we're gonna have to duplicate this one, and let's rename it to something useful. Protector MBP protector underscore UE4. Let's assign it before we forget. And let's modify this a little bit. If we go to the class settings and go to advanced, we're going to have to switch this to the UE4 mannequin we were using. As you can see in the path, it's game protector mannequin character mesh. Of course, assign it, compile, and save, and restart the engine. Restarting is very important, do not skip this point. After restarting, if we open the character again, double check everything is correct, the skeletal mesh and the animation blueprint. Go to the animation blueprint and you can see that the character changed already. It was using the UE5, now it's using the UE4. Of course, the reason behind this is because the animations it's using is not the one we were looking for, so we're gonna have to switch to something else. Let's start with the anim graph and we go directly to locomotion. From locomotion we have the idle, and this will depend on the weapon integer. Now, weapon integer, because I'm doing it for the sake of the demo, I have the knife and the the sword and shield. Now, in our scenario, we don't really care much because if it's idle, and we only have one weapon type. If you have more than one weapon type, you can do the following thing. I'm gonna explain the theory behind it, and I'm gonna leave the practice to you. In my case, I have an integer here I'm using, which is called the weapon integer. Now, if you find references, you're gonna find it assigned based on the weapon equipped, which is assigned here. Now, sword and shield in specific, if you look for, what do you call it? The tag name it's using, which you will be finding it on the right side. Weapon tag is weapon type sword and shield. And if you check the other one, which is on the ground as well, it's using knife. Knife is a type knife. Now I'm not using type knife in the weapon integer itself, so I'm only using uh, the sword and shield as a reference. So that's why we don't need to use this. But in case you do, you can assign different integers based on any value that you have. So the value of 1 is assigned to sword and shield, like we just saw. If you have a knife, it can be 2. If you have a spear, it can be 3. Whatever you do is up to you. Now we don't need this, so I'm gonna delete that. And we don't need this either, so we can delete this one as well. I'll explain current moveset in the next locomotion state. So for idle, let's do idle for now. And we have protector idle. And this is in combat, so let's use something that is not in combat. Let's use this one. This seems about right. Now, if we play right away, you can notice we are right away in the idle we assigned. However, movement, when you start moving, things go wrong. That's because you only did one portion of it and not the whole thing. Now, for walking and running, we're gonna do something similar. Again, open integer we don't need. We're only going to use one of them. Let's delete this one. And we're gonna do the default, the common, and the blocking. I'll do the blocking later when we do a blocking and uh, a blocking state and ability. But for now, let's do the common and the default. Now, common and default. Let's start with default for now. And this will be based on targeting. Now, targeting, we'll come to it in a bit, but this is not important for now. Know in the beginning that targeting will be false. So we're gonna follow this path and then this path. So in the case of you as a player not targeting anything, which is the default, we're gonna use a blended space with a direction of 0. Because we don't care about directions. I'll show you in a little bit. Directions are not important if you're not targeting, because you'll be following the character movement. For example, if you play here and I click S, you see the whole character rotating backwards. In the case of targeting, that's not what happens. For example, I'll show you pretty quickly. If I target right here and I click A or D, I move to the side, but rather I don't rotate the entire character. So if I click S, I'm still rotating forward, not in the direction of I'm moving. So by default, the targeting will be false and the direction will be 0. So let's assign the blend space because this is also important. Now if we go to the the skeleton we had, if you right click on it, go to create and create a blend space here. Let's call it blend space player protector walk idle default. And we're gonna go to the horizontal side and we call this direction from minus 180 to 180 degrees, of course across 8 divisions. And we're gonna go to the vertical axis and let's call this speed from 0 to 600. And I'm gonna have to add some weight speed for the smoothing, so let's call it 4. And let's do the idle walk things. So let's stick with common because we're already out of combat. So all 3 angles will be common. If you want things to be snappy, just enable snapping, and you'll see it's right on the straight line. Let's do common walk. Make sure to pick an in-place animation. If it's a route, you might see some forward moving when you don't need it. So stick with route for now. We don't use a direction for the time being, so keep that in mind. The direction will be 0. And if there is a common run, we can use that one as well. This is also in place. You can see that from the folder on the right. Protector / common / in place. Let's save and try after we drag it here, of course. We'll move this one here and the speed will be speed, direction will be 0. Now if we move, it's still the same problem. If you try debugging that, and let's find out. If we pull this off, go up, and let's find out why. You see, when I try to walk, it's going to the common, not the default. Default is enabled in case no other things is enabled. So like we discussed, we're gonna do the blocking later, so I'll unhook this one. And we'll start by doing common. Now, if you click on correct moveset, the default value is common. Now, the way this value changes is based on the states that you have the moment you equip a weapon, unequip a weapon, and so on. Now, by default, it's common. So you're gonna start with common, and from there we're gonna move to the other things. Now, let's go to the skeleton that we assigned it to, and let me delete this one because this was done off camera. Right mouse click on the skeleton, create, and we all need a single direction blended space. So 1D direction, blended space underscore 1D underscore protector player. Let me open this one. We're gonna enable snap to grid on the beginning. The name will be speed from 0 to 600 or 300, up to you. I'll revert this back to 4. The weighted speed will be 4. And let's start with the common animations again, since this is all what we need for now. And make sure everything is in place. Do not put any root motion in any blend space that you create. From now on, do not think of root motion in the blend space. So come on idle, come on walk, and finally come on run. And let's take this one and put it directly in the element graph. I'm gonna close the things we don't need so we don't make a mistake. Move this one here, move this one here. Of course, make sure the weapon integer is not there. We already removed that part. And let's try. If we play and move around, and you can see we're moving around correctly. That takes care of common. Let's do the rest of the things that are missing. So right now we don't have a weapon in our hand, so we can work on the weapon. And while we are working on the weapon, I'll show you uh, later on how do states matter when it comes to the correct moveset we were talking about. Now, so let's worry about the weapon for the time being, and the rest of the animation graph we will take care of it when the time comes. So that covers the basic setup of the uh, anim graph for the player character, at least for the time being. While we're developing things, I'll complete the missing parts when we need it. This way, you learn how do systems work together, and when do you need something and when you don't need something. So I'll see you guys in the next one.